All right. Hello and welcome back. Today I have a very special guest here with me. I have a dear friend of mine, Angel Rockwell. Hello, Angel. How are you?
Hello, I'm fantastic. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Yes, I am excited too. So I asked Angel to come on here and share just her experience with motherhood. And so Angel is a healer. She's a mother of two herself. She is a spirit channel and she is the host of the Wild Mama podcast. And so I met Angel and I was actually like, correct me if I'm wrong, Angel, but I feel like it was 2021. It hasn't been
Yeah,
like an incredible amount of time, but the interesting thing about our relationship is that I met Angel through community in master classes and masterminds. And it's a very interesting way to meet people because there is no small talk. It's like straight to the point. Like, here's my deepest, darkest fear. Here's my biggest dream. Like, here's how I get in the way of myself all the time. And you're literally just like pouring your heart out. And so that was my first interaction with Angel, was really getting to know her on a deeper, on a soul level. And same for her, for me, I believe. And
absolutely.
yeah, I love that. And so we've kept the relationship going. And the beauty of it is that I don't talk to Angel all the time. But when I do, it's like we don't miss a beat and there is no small talk. And yeah, I'm just excited. I think that I believe that we're always guided to the people that are meant to be in our lives. And whether that's for a connection, for a lesson, to hold up the mirror for one another, there's always a reason. And I know that Angel is no exception in that. And recently I have been just feeling called to have this conversation with Angel because, as you're going to hear, I would say that Angel lives her life. And you would say this too, Angel, I believe. So I'm not trying to like
I
paint.
trust I trust you. You can you can,
Okay.
you can go all in. Just say
But
it.
you generally do live your life differently than most people. And you are not afraid to own that and claim that. And the way that I see you living your life that is very admirable to me is that you're extremely present, especially in your motherhood. You're not afraid to slow down and you're not afraid to challenge like just the way that we've always done things and decide and choose for you and your family to do what feels right for you rather than what society has told us is right. And
Yes.
so that's big and that's bold and that's brave. And I really admire that about you. So I just
Well,
want to share that with you.
I
Um,
I appreciate that. It's nice to be seen for who I am to be. I think there are so many other people in this world that don't. And people that are really close to me, even like family, who don't see me with the clarity that you do. And that's why I love you and appreciate you so much. Because it's
uh-oh, you step, I can't hear you.
Oh, we're back. He pushed the mute button.
Okay.
It's why the buttons always have to glow. The children just want to
Yeah.
touch. Uh, yeah, it feels really delicious just to be seen for who I know I am to be, because so many people come, and I'm sure we'll get into this as well, and it comes so much into motherhood, that and how we view ourselves and how we approach life and how we frame up what's possible and what we can see in people. And a lot of the time what we see is not the truth.
Mhm. Yeah, we only allow ourselves to see certain things and we can be very close-minded, right? Because we see things our way a lot of the time. And I think that's what's been really interesting to me. So when I first met you, you have two children. Your son is, you just told me, 17 months.
Yeah.
And how old is Ophelia now?
She's 5 3/4.
5 3/4. So I feel like when I met you, she had to be like 2 or 3.
Yeah,
And
she was just about, oh yeah, she was just about 3. Yeah.
okay. And so you just do things differently. And I remember like one of the first calls that I met Ophelia, like you just had Ophelia on the call. And honestly, like for me coming from like corporate America, like I was like, oh, like, wow, she has her kid on the tape, like it was this very like foreign thing that you just had your kid with you there. And that is how you live your life. Like your son is on your lap right now, and like you just incorporate your kids into everything that you do. And I want to dive into that a lot deeper, because I don't, that is not the norm. And I think that that's another thing that society has told us, like, this isn't the way. And I know that's a lot of the work that you're doing right now is really about like healing that mother-child bond and reframing the way that we look at motherhood and our connection with our children. And so that is why I brought you on today, to dive into all of that. And yeah, when I tell you that Angel and I have real conversations, that is the truth. You're that here today. When I sent Angel kind of an overview of what we would talk about, her response was, damn woman, we are getting into it. And we are, because I think that some of the things that we're going to talk about could be considered like sticky subjects, if you will, or like, you know, almost like a divide in motherhood, like you do it this way and I do it this way, and what's right and what's wrong. And what I want and my hope out of this conversation is that we can see that you and I are very much alike, even though we do things differently. I think that a lot of times we have the same intention, but we're not necessarily going about it the right way, and so, or the same way. So that's where this conversation is going. And so I really wanted to talk to you, Angel, because so Angel homeschools, and you have a baby on your hip nearly at all times, right? And so is this the way that you were raised? Were you raised where your parents were super hands-on like that, and like the attention was all about the children in your household? Tell me a little bit about your childhood, Angel.
It's so funny. Basically, since you just super small side note, basically, since you've invited me on to do this podcast with you, Ophelia's been asking me before bed every night to tell her about my childhood. Really interesting, and a very emotional process for me as well. And also one little thing. Yes, technically I homeschool. We'll get into other things as well, but I don't like to use that term because I don't welcome this energy of school systems or that government regulation in my home whatsoever. I like to say that I cultivate an inspired environment for learning.
I love that. I love it.
Oh, that's his new favorite word right now as well. But to my childhood, no, absolutely not. This is not the environment that I grew up in. Hey, where even to begin on that one? You've given me this question prior, and I think I'm just going to go with the flow and what spirit calls me to start sharing here. Not only was this not the environment that I grew up in, I actually lived away from home from the age of 10 to 14. In private school, and I didn't live with my family at all. I just came home on weekends. It was a professional ballet school, so I lived away from my parents. So it was, and the age of 10 is very young. You're still a child at that age. But prior to that, I guess it was my mom left work to be home with us, I think when I was 3, if I remember that correctly. But she was working. You know, it was the way things were at the time. You know, you got your, was it 17 weeks or something of mat leave in Canada at the time, and she went back to work, and I think she wanted to be home, but my parents just got to a point where they just needed the money, and that's what they decided to do. Was my mom went back to work and my dad had his accounting practice, and then things changed and she was able to, you know, kind of step back again. She did go back to work again. It was just kind of, she was in and out. She was lucky, I guess, that she was able to, for those watching on video, you can see my face. She was lucky, I guess, that she was able to step in and out of her job that way. But no, my childhood, when I think of like the memories that stand out, my husband and I were talking about this the other day, my parents weren't there. It was, you know, the memories that are there, it's of friends or babysitters, and like terrible babysitter experiences. You know, like one babysitter left me alone on the front porch of my house because my mom wasn't home yet. And my mom came home and I was crying because I had to pee so bad. And I'd probably peed my pants at that point. I don't remember. You know, and like being left out in the cold at another babysitter's house because she had to watch her soap operas. And, you know, my parents would find out about these things and then pull us and we'd find a new one. But so that, I think that's a really typical childhood of my age, you know, being bounced around from babysitter to babysitter. I was in public school. I don't remember much about it. It wasn't pivotal or monumental for me at all. And you did ask a question later, so we can maybe jump into the school system on another note. It wasn't like this. I think it's been really hard. It's been a big challenge for me in my adult life to recognize that my mother wasn't really the mother that all of us want to have, which is just to be loved and to be held and to be present with. It's in my adult life, I see my parents as they're very non-changing people. They are who they are. They'll tell you that. They're like, we like who we are. We don't want to change. And that's not new. So if this is who they are now, that's who they were then. You know, that I can put two and two together. I have a very smart, logical mind. And then to reframe, to look back and say, okay, well, these few select memories I have of my childhood, and you're aware as well that I had a repressed sexual trauma come into my adult awareness from when I was 5, that just because I was doing the work that I was doing and my husband and I were doing the work in our marriage and my life became a safe enough space for me to see my past for what it was, that was really challenging too, to understand how that could possibly have happened with the parents who I thought that they were. And it's not about demonizing my parents, or they did the best they could. And we hear that a lot. And my husband hates when I say that. And I'm not a fan of the phrase either. That also was something that just became accepted. Well, they're doing the best they can. That's just the way it is. But if you're telling people you're doing the best you can, you know, are you really, like, sometimes you just need a slap in the face and say, like, you're not doing the best that you can. And that's okay. But being willing to be honest and say, like, I can do better. I can be better. Because at the end of the day, it's just you and your satisfaction. How satisfied are you with your day? Do you feel like you're a good mother? Do you know that you're a good mother? Do you lay your head on your pillow at the end of the day, just like, oh, so deeply satisfied and in love and bliss with your day because it was just magic? And even though your kid cried and maybe he bit your boob and maybe, like, who knows what happened? Like, all these things can happen, but there's still that deep satisfaction that can underlie that. And I know my mother didn't have that. She doesn't have it now. You know, I mean, we could, my relationship with my mother is a whole other podcast series. I love her. And the access to information was always there. I think that's another narrative that we're told, but we just have access to so much more now. And that's just BS. We've always had access to anything in the universe that we want. We've just been told that you don't, from so many different avenues. And so, yeah, so my childhood was very solitary. I think I do have memories of, you know, playing with my brother and, you know, doing certain things. My brother's about 2 years older than I am. So we grew up really close in my memory. And I haven't spoken to my brother. I haven't seen my brother since 2017. And I haven't spoken to him in, well, probably just as long. And I would love to have a relationship with my brother, but he's in a different area where he's kind of said, you know, I don't want this relationship with you. I'm a very triggering person for a lot of people. And I know you even said in your email that you were triggered by some of the things that I post. And I love when people feel triggered by me. I love it even more when they take responsibility that they're the one triggered by me, that I'm not the one triggering them, because that's a really big differentiation to make that is tough. So I guess to segue back to my childhood, it was, I think I was about 5 and I started, like, speaking to people and they were like, oh, like, she's talking. Like, nobody really knew I had a voice before I was 5. And that's the story that I'm told by my parents. I don't have that recollection other than just through story from them. And I don't, like, I was not like this. I was not outspoken. None of this. I remember when I hit 17, making a conscious choice to, like, just be myself and start, like, wearing the clothes, like, really wearing the clothes that I want to wear and walking my own path, you know, instead of, you know, the year before I was wearing, like, backwards baseball caps and baggy jeans, because we're going back to, like, late 90s, early 2000s here. That was cool. And then all of a sudden I was, like, dyeing my hair blonde and wearing bright pink floral mini skirts with, like, geometric teal tops and, like, things that didn't match, felt really good. And just, yeah, or not, maybe not banging those. You got the gemstones right now. So 17, I remember that being, like, a really pivotal point for me but childhood, yeah, it was very quiet. It was very solitary, even when I moved away and gone to ballet school. All right, we're gonna just take a moment. Oh, my. Authentic moment in the life of Mama. It's all right. Yeah. No, we like to bang bang the rocks. That's all right. Okay, we're just not going to do that right now. I was very. He's a lot more. Will you? Hey, let's excuse me. Let's excuse me. Let's excuse me. We don't want to do that. You got to see Ophelia when she was little, and she was not as like big and bold. This little man's got a big old voice, and he's used it since even in my belly. I remember I used to talk to him like every night when I was pregnant. We had all kinds of chats. But
Yeah, I feel like the boys are rowdier when they're younger, and then as they get older, they become easier and the girls become more challenging.
we will see. We will see. We will see.
So that's impressive that you kind of made that decision for yourself at 17, because that's, I mean, I waited till I was like 30. So that is really impressive that you were like, I'm going to choose something different for myself now, and I'm going to lean into who I am and find my
I've done
voice.
it numerous times since. It wasn't the only time, and it wasn't the only lean in, and I don't think it'll be the last either.
Totally.
But it
So,
gets easier. It's like it's less drastic. You're like, oh, a little off course. I'm gonna lean in a little more, but I'm kind of here already. Yeah, 17 was definitely a big moment of just looking around and being like, what am I doing? This
what,
doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like me at all.
yeah. So how much of the way that you parent do you feel like is in a response to your childhood? Like, did you, before you became a mother, were you like, I'm going to do the exact opposite of that? Or is this just how it's come naturally to you?
It has come naturally to me, and I think that's uh just a beautiful part of my magic. I will own that. And the way I viewed my childhood and how my parents parented me has been a really big shift as well in my spiritual journey, and just recognizing that I am a spiritual being living in a physical body, and I'm here to create magic and enjoy the time that I'm here. So the way that I view, like when I first wanted to have children, I was like 19 and I was like, I want to have kids. And at that time, I probably would have said I wanted to be like my parents, because of the way I viewed them, the lens that I had on at the time. And then I got into a relationship, went on for 10 years. I was married previously, and inside that marriage, I didn't want to have kids. It wasn't something that we really talked about. We were still young, and not really, but we were young. And then when that really started falling apart, I shifted, like, I don't want to have kids. Like, what a mess. That I just knew this would be such a bigger hurdle to get over if children were involved. So it just kind of shifted me into like, I don't want kids. Maybe not never, but just it wasn't a mindset for me at all. And then I met my husband, and we were both just hot messes when we met. It's kind of how we connected. We were like, there's no future for us. We're just hot messes. Let's just hang out. And we were both on the same page, like no kids, not doing it. His parents were just recently divorced. I was in the process of getting divorced myself at the time where I met my husband. And so we were just like, no, there was like no strings attached for us, but we were good on that. And then actually it took me getting pregnant to come back to wanting to have children. That was another just like click moment. My husband's like, you're pregnant, your boobs are big. I was like, I'm not pregnant. And then I took a test, and that was like that moment in The Wizard of Oz, if you've seen the movie, when it goes from black and white to Technicolor, where the world just all of a sudden was like, ha, this is your life. And I felt like a woman for the first time in my life when I took that pregnancy test. And so much of the stuff that I had been clouded with and was concerned about, like, who am I? What do I do? I'd just been fired from a job that I thought was my whole trajectory. And I was going to, like, the whole thing, I got fired, and that whole community, that whole job, everything was gone. And I was trying to find myself again. And then pregnancy test was positive, and I just knew who I was, not in mind, but I felt it. And then I miscarried that baby, and that's a whole other tangent of story too. But so in all of that, every step of that process, the reason why I went on that whole little tangent was at each kind of point in that journey, my perception of how my childhood was has shifted, because when I started integrating in like in body and sensation and like wisdom, knowing who I am as a mother, it was very much in contrast to what I had experienced as a child. So that really opened up a lot for me. And again, was of course, interestingly enough, just talking about this the other day, that in terms of parenting, most people look at it that way. They look at their past and they say, well, my parents did this and I loved it. Or my parents did this and I love that, so I want to be just like them. Or my parents did this and I hated it, I don't want to be like that at all. And then they choose from that foundation. It's such a rocky foundation, and it's also rooted in the past, and it has nothing to do with our children. It has everything to do with us and our inability to let go. And I'm not sure what you want here right now, Bubby boy. Sometimes he wants to stand and drink milk these days too. So I'm just gonna do a little warrior two position here. He's standing on his stool, and this will be pleasant. Both of those, I'm just gonna flat out say both of those are wrong. Both of those are incorrect. And I felt that. And actually my husband and I were in marriage counseling years ago, and we had a counselor say this to us, that most people parent one of two ways. One, they love what their parents did, they try to replicate, or two, they dislike what their parents did, they try to do what they perceive to be the opposite. And the correct way, in her mind, in my experience, I will say this is truth, is to look at your child, to be present with them, and listen to what they need. It has nothing to do with you. You're here and you're the adult, and what do you want your relationship with your children to be like? What do you want to cultivate? What's your vision for your family? What's your vision for your relationship? You know, I think my husband and I, we have been given a very diverse and overflowing buffet of, of opportunities with our parents to see what it is that we want to become. You know, I mean, even so to this day, like we neither my husband or I, and he's a blessing to me to have that sounding board for conversation. We don't have the relationship with our parents at all that we want. At the end of it, all we want is to he keeps clicking the mute button. Hey, Bubby, I can't have you touching that right now, my love. We have that little child in us, and we just want to be loved. We want to feel like they want us. I think in both of our wounds from our past, we have the feelings of not being wanted. There's a lot of neglect and manipulation and abuse, really, and very freely speaking these things, knowing that my parents will probably never listen to this podcast. But even if they did, my mother-in-law might. I'm tired of not just speaking the truth about it, and also having to be okay. Like, you didn't know, you weren't. I know that my parents weren't waking up every day being like, we're going to not show up for our kids. We're going to give them we're going to treat them poorly. Like, that wasn't them, you know, like in their minds at the time, they did the best that they could have. And that's a beautiful thing, because it's given me, so I'll stop referring to him, much as we've been talking about it so much lately. It's given us the opportunity to make different choices. It's given us the opportunity to break the cycles, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what you said that I think was just like profound is that we do make our motherhood is so much about us. It's so much about our childhood. It's so much about, you know, the expectation that we put on ourselves of the type of parent that we want to be. And at the end of the day, it's not about us. It's about our kids. It's about their needs, which are probably not even the same as ours, and adjusting to that and to who they need us to be, not who we need them to be. And I see that. I think that that's something that a lot of parents get stuck on, is like needing their kids to be a certain way, look a certain way, act a certain way. And yeah, it's our expectation, and that's not fair to them.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%. It's one of the principles of like one of the biggest pieces of the foundation of how I parent is that I'm here to guide you to be you.
Yeah.
And I say this to my daughter all the time, and it applies to everything. If you have to use that much force, it's not in alignment. Something's out of whack. And that goes for Lego, trying to get a zipper done up, and relationships and conversations. It applies to everything. And it's it drives my husband a little bit nuts from time to time because my children are wild and free. I allow them to do what they want. And the difference in that is just like, it's total anarchy over there. It's chaos. You can't just let them run around and eat bonbons all day and throw their poo on the wall. Like, that's not what's happening around here, because I allow my children to do what they want. I don't allow them to do things that are out of alignment with who they are, because I know that I know that they want to live healthy, happy lives. I know, and that's where the guidance comes in. And it's a really fine, it's a really delicate differentiation to make in allowing your kids to do what they want and allowing your kids to do what they think they want. Because what they think they want is influenced by like, well, her up the street has an iPhone and I want an iPhone. Do you want an iPhone? No kid wants a fucking iPhone. Sorry.
Oh, the F-bomb.
This is not it's also not an Apple thing. I'm not Apple. I'm a Samsung person. Regardless, it's not a brand thing. It's like what children want is to be happy. It's what we all want. Like, we all have that child in us. Like, what do you want right now? You want to be happy. You want to be free. You want to be satisfied. You want to be able to do what the frick you want.
Yeah.
I also have it. The frick comes out. That's what we all want. So why on earth would we as parents think that we can raise our children to not do what they want, not have that way what they want, not be accepted for what they want, not be appreciated for what they want, and somehow in that magic of dysfunction, grow up to be somebody who has a mind for critical thinking or the ability to know what they want and the ability to stand up for themselves in tough times when you need to stand for where you're required to have a backbone, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
it's ease, it's convenience for the parents. It's like, well, I want this and you're getting in the way. And that's one of my biggest triggers in parenting is seeing children be blamed. And it's not, I honestly don't think there's any mother out there saying it's your fault that my life is shit. But in essence, that's what's happening. They're like, I had a stressful day. Like the kids were too much. It was so stressful. Like, I'm overwhelmed and I'm anxious. And it's all because it all comes down to you're blaming your kids. You can't handle your kids and you're making it their problem. The kids are stressing me out, or I mean, there's a myriad of excuses that could be used. I don't make them, so maybe I can't reiterate them properly. But if we're unhappy, if we're stressed or anxious as mothers, it's not our kids' fault. It's going back to like taking responsibility for your triggers, right? He really wants to push that mute button so bad. I want to push the mute button. You can't push the mute button, and it's a piece of my magic is I'm able to really pick up on the energy of people, and I'm really able to just see them. Not for the face they have on, not for the clothes that they're wearing, and not for any of that, like to see them, especially in motherhood, like with their children. I can feel that so powerfully. And sometimes it's tough because I see who they're trying to be and I know who they are. And I know who they are because I'm a mother. Every single woman on the planet is a mother, whether she chooses to step into it or not. Like, I'm not saying every woman has to go and procreate because that's her choice and not mine, of course, but that's who she is. You can't deny that. It's just like it's just like anything else. It's like, oh, they're a beautiful painter, like, but they're doing computer programming. Like, they are an artist. They are a painter. They just haven't stepped into it. It's the motherhood is no different. And every single woman's a mother. They just haven't stepped into it. And when you have this, and I know it also to be true because I experienced it with my parents. It's like I've always, oh man, have I been the fucking problem in my family, and flat out been told, like, Angel, you can't say that. You can't say that. You can't act like that. You can't be that way. Like numerous times, like my mother's in tears, and my intention was to just open up an honest conversation and talk to her and like maybe hug her and have her hold me and be like, daughter, I love you, and all of a sudden she's crying and I'm the bad guy because she can't own her shit. Really, And it's tough. So I
Yeah.
don't want to be. So yeah, in my past, I don't want to be that. But I don't want to be that because it sucks because I'm her daughter. And I don't want to be that also from the present because that's not what my daughter came here for. She didn't come here for me to project my stuff onto her and to not be able to be in this present moment and forget yesterday and just own today. Like our children are such beautiful examples of that. You know, I'm fun to say they're crying and they're upset because, you know, the dog stole their muffin, which happens sometimes around here. And then I always say, like, it's okay, you know, you hold them. You don't need to logically explain to them what happened. They just want the love, and you hold them and you kiss them, and then they're like, you're running down off to play the next. They're not holding on to that. They're not going to bed being like, oh my God, it was so hard today. The dog ate my muffin and it was brutal and I cried and all these feelings, they're still here. They just let them out.
Yeah.
Them out. And again, we haven't been taught to do that. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, hold your feelings in. I don't care. I've cried in grocery stores. You know, like it doesn't matter. I'm not going to wait till I get home. I mean, you know, there are some things like sometimes, you know, you need a really good ugly cry and like you can let a few tears out in public and then, you know, you're going to go home and ugly cry with your, I ugly cry with my kids. You know, I know there's, uh, yes, my love. Okay. Then can you navigate that on your own, please, my love? There's somebody brought this up in a conversation. I feel like it was you, but we haven't spoken, so it must not have been you. There's like a Sex and the City movie, I think, when like Charlotte, like she's freaking out and her kids, ah, mommy, 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 and she like hides in the closet and cries. Um, Mothers everywhere do that. They're like, I'm overwhelmed, I'm scared, like, and they'll shut the door and think, it's okay, you can do that. And it is okay, you can do that. And do you want to do that? Is that the life that you want? Because I promise you this, when you're sitting in that closet crying alone, or the bathroom, let's face it, it's usually the bathroom, crying alone, you don't feel good. Where do you want to be in that scenario? You want to be with your kids and you want to be happy. Do you want to pause this just for one moment?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be right back.
So how much of the processing of your childhood you feel like you did before becoming a mother versus after you became a mother? Like, do you feel like it really came to light after, or were you already aware of it?
Yes, so much yes. After 100%. I think I got pregnant in 2017 when that was a miscarried pregnancy. And I yeah, I hadn't at all. I hadn't even it was 2017 coincidentally that I realized I had zero connection to spirit whatsoever. I grew up in a religious home, not overly like I went to Lutheran church and I all called the lazy Christians. There was no
Yes.
like condemnation for anything. I was just like, you're here, yay. I liked going to church for the reason I got to sing. I really like to sing. So that was kind of my favorite part of going to church and being together as a family. Like that's what I love the most. That I was with my family. We did something together. My dad, he's an entrepreneur. He had his own accounting practice for years. My grandparents also entrepreneurial, had their own business. My dad and his brother stepped into like he was very busy. Wasn't around. I think it's one of his biggest regrets is not being around a lot, worked like nights, didn't take vacation, stuff like that. My father and I have a more openly communicative relationship than my mother and I do. But yeah, that was a segue. I lost my track a little bit. This was all about processing before or after or after uh, motherhood. Yeah, I didn't. I think I didn't resonate with religion in the way it had been presented to me. And spirituality hadn't presented itself to me in a way that I could connect with, source, God itself, in a way that really felt good. That didn't come to me until I got pregnant, and this channel just opened, and it was just, the light shone down from the heavens and started illuminating everything. There's like a big tractor beam just shining around on my light still to this day. It's like, oh, that. Oh, some of them are yay, and some of them are, oh no, that's there. Yikes. That really that was a shifting point for my spirit, my access to spirituality for sure. And my access to spirituality was definitely my safety for being able to process what my childhood was and what it wasn't. and really come back to like what we all want it to be, you know, going back to that crying in the closet. You know, I'm never going to tell anybody, especially any mother, like what she needs to get through a day. But where I stand and what I know is that no mother needs to cry. No mother needs to feel about herself the way that she does, where her only option is to cry alone in the closet. Because I know that no mother wants to think of their child feeling that way alone, crying alone. We don't want that for our kids, but we show them that. It's okay.
Mhm.
It's okay. Yes, it's okay. And what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, I
Like,
agree. Do you think that we're like so scared to show, like you said, you ugly cry in front of your kids? And I cry in front of my kids too, because it's like we're human. And I think for a lot of parents, men or women, I think that they take on the role of like the protector and they have to be really strong. And a lot of times that doesn't include showing emotion, right? It's like dealing with everything on your own. But what are you teaching your kids then? Then you're not talking about your feelings, you're not expressing yourself. You're not being true to yourself in a lot of moments because you're pushing down whatever it is that you're feeling. And
mm,
our kids are learning from our behavior, right?
yeah. And we all know this to be true. You don't remember what somebody said, but you remember how they made you feel.
Hmm.
We all know this. Everybody says it. But look at your kids. Everybody's out there trying to explain everything to them, but it's got to be this way, and you have to do that way, and you have to learn it that way, and da da da. Like they're always explaining, they're justifying, they're explaining everything, and their kids just feel the energy. You could be saying, you could be explaining the most profound concept and the most eloquent, beautiful words, and if what you're being at the time is just a big ball of fear, that's all they're getting. That's
Hmm.
all they're getting. And even up to age 7, or maybe even age 8, energetically, our children are us. Like their chakras, their energetic centers are not different than ours. They are us. So it's not they're just feeling us, like they are experiencing what we're experiencing. And again, we haven't been taught this. And to say like, oh, this is all new. I would say like I'm the like, who am I? You asked me earlier, like, how do you want to introduce you? I'm like, who am I? What are the words that properly define what it is that I'm embodying at this point in my life? And oh man, I lost my train of thought again there. It happens sometimes.
About who you are.
Yeah, something about who I've lost it. It might come back.
That's okay. So do you not have mom guilt then? Because one of the things you said is like, yeah, you don't want to feel bad in your motherhood, but I think a lot of us do experience mom guilt. Is that not something you generally experience?
No.
And so how do you avoid it? Tell us how, Angel, and let.
How do you avoid? Yeah, Mom, I mean, I'm familiar with the phrase. I don't live under a rock entirely, although I do like to play with them. Uh, could you describe in some different words what mom guilt is, at least for you?
Yeah. For it can be, oh my goodness, so many different things. Basically, any time that I feel like maybe I did miss the mark on how I showed up for my daughter in a certain situation, or maybe I did lose my temper, or maybe I prioritize myself over them and I can feel that that impacted them, or I can feel that it affected them in some way. So it's like basically anything that's associated with my kids that I feel unsettled about. Like, and a lot of times it is my own actions. But other times it's just, I don't know, not so much associated, sometimes associated with worry, like worry about, I did this, how's that going to impact them?
Mhm.
And carrying all that. It's just this weight of like, I am responsible for these children. I am responsible for the adults that they become. I am responsible for their childhood experience and not creating trauma for them. And so that's heavy. That's like a big weight that I think a lot of us carry.
Okay. That's too much responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that motherhood?
Not.
Watch.
No, it's not. That's what I'm here to do. People, I know my husband is, I'm sorry, keep going back from him. He's like on my shoulder right now. He's so excited for this podcast. He's like, I'm going to share it with every mother that I know, because he wants families to have what we have. And That's too much responsibility. I think if we could play around in the arena just for a moment of not having this societally implanted mom guilt concept, like just pretend that it's not there. Pretend that it's not a hashtag. Pretend that it's not on coffee mugs and all this other stuff. And it comes back to you. You are not responsible for your children. You are responsible for who you are with your children.
Mm. I like that. So what if you're not proud of who you were in a moment? Like, and that was so one thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I paused there just so it could sink in, because I feel like people are gonna hear that and say like, what do you mean I'm not responsible for my children? You're responsible for who you are with your children. And yes, I don't mean like, don't take care of them, don't let them run around with knives. Like, you are responsible for their safety as children, and like all these other things. What I mean, like the grand concepts of I'm responsible for who they become. That is not your responsibility. It's your responsibility is who you are with them. They get to choose. And that's a scary thing. It's like, well, I can't let them choose. They're going to choose candy. I promise you, my children have options that other children would be like, oh my God. And they would probably gorge on the ice cream and the candy. But I've never taken the choice away from them. My children have always had the choice. And I live in an option. Well, you can have that if you want to, but I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to choose this. And why? I'm choosing to eat this for breakfast. And my daughter sometimes has ice cream for breakfast, to be honest. If she's like, but I want it, I'm like, okay, go for it. And then 20 minutes later, when she's like, I don't feel so good, can I have some of what you're eating? I'm like, yeah. But she's learning that on her own. She's not doing it because I was a dictator in the family who told her what to eat and what to do and how to do it, because she's not learning anything. She's not getting to experience her life. And yeah, she got a little bit sick. Is there a line there? For sure. I'm gonna go outside and play with machetes. No, but like, I don't have machetes in the house. I don't even know why that came up. Just so you know, that's not what's, hey, it's giving them the power of choice. Because I know you as a coach, I know you as a woman, what you're coming back to now is owning your choice, like coming into how do I make empowered choices? How do we come back to this place where we're making empowered choices, where I'm choosing from a place of alignment with me and what I want? Because we weren't given that, but we're also not giving it to our children. Most people aren't. I am, and if we don't allow them to practice now where it's safe, where they're in our homes and they're in our arms, and we can help to guide them. This is really the most powerful point. And again, that's why I'm not a fan of the public school system, because we give them away and then somebody else gets to have all this magic and they fuck it up. This is the magical time where they can practice, they can fail, they can fall, they can like largely screw it up, but we are here. And my daughter says she's never moving out of the house. Sometimes we say that. She's like, I'm not moving out of the house. I'm going to get married. I'm going to live here with you. And you know what? Honestly, if she wants to, we're just going to get a bigger house, and we could do a couple bigger properties. She can have a house over there. We'll have a house over here. I'm all for it. I'm not a fan of your children are 18. They're on their own, because I want my mommy and she ain't here, and I know that when my daughter's 40, she's going to want her mommy and I'm going to be there. It's giving them the choice. And then that does alleviate the mom guilt. I think that might be the magical point right there, is like, we have guilt because you're trying to take too much responsibility. I'm not saying don't be responsible for your kids, 100% do it, but how that responsibility is going to be unique for you and your family. But when you take on too much, like an example outside of motherhood that might help to illustrate would be my husband. When we first got married, he was a baby. Like, he was he was so young and so sweet, and hadn't begun any kind of like self-reflection, no journey whatsoever. Like, he just, yeah, this is not about him. Now I've lost my train of thought again, because I took a sip. What were we just talking about?
About mom guilt and about
Oh, wait, taking too much responsibility. He's the example. Is I was taking too much responsibility for him. Like, he was being irresponsible with his spending. And I monitored it. I helicopter parented my husband, and I monitored his bank accounts, and I took his buying power away. We're like, you know what I mean? And it was an agreement we made. I didn't force it on him. He was like, you're right, I'm not responsible. So I just stepped in and I micromanaged every little thing that he was doing. And it blew up in our faces, I'll tell you that much. It didn't end well. But because he didn't know anything. Like, granted, you can go back to his parents, and like, they could have guided him and helped teach him some of these things. He didn't know them, but I wasn't helping him either. He wasn't learning anything. I was like, your parents should have taught you this. You didn't know. Well, they screwed it up. So I'm just going to step in and do what I need to do to make sure that like our family's okay. And it was all from fear of having the finances blown. And, you know, we had I was pregnant, all these things, right? But it was all from fear. And I didn't feel good about it. I felt guilty about it. And I was in my head every night, just like, oh my God, like, where is he? He said he's going out for this like work dinner, but like, what's he spending and where's he going? It was madness and it was chaos. And it was so toxic to our marriage as well. And I just had to cut the shit really with myself. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And it got messier before it got better for sure. But we're in a really good place now. And that's what we do to our kids, is we look at them differently. We're like, but they're little and they're kids and they don't know any better. I get very fired, not triggered. I get very fired up passionately when people say like, but your kids don't know. Your kids don't know. They don't know any better. They don't know that yet. I'm like, well, because you're telling them that they're dumb. They know better than you do. Have you seen my kids? You should all see my children. Everybody come on out to my house and spend a day with me and my kids. They are wise, they're intelligent, they're intuitive, and they make beautiful conscious choices, and they make those conscious choices from a place of what they want. And we grew up in a world where you don't get to have what you want. Don't count your chickens before they're hatched. Don't get your hopes up. You know, we were prepared to fail. No one was like, well, what if it does work out? How are you going to feel then? Like, you know, that's not how it was. And I'm not raising my kids that way because that's not the way that I see the world. My husband's coming around to it now, but a lot of the time it's just like, you're a crazy lady. Nobody lives in your world. I was like, but they will.
Well, and I think that's also tied to like us being unsure of ourselves and unsure of who we are, right? Because we are told how we have to be and how we should be showing up and what's right and what's wrong. And so we do lose that power of choice in who we are and the confidence in who we are, because we're trying to like walk this straight and narrow line that maybe was never ours to walk in the first place.
It's a wild and crazy path, woman, and it is beautiful. I wanted to come back because I feel like I didn't really put that pin in that about that's the magic of dispelling this mom guilt in knowing what you're responsible for. Like getting really clear. I'm responsible for making sure my kids don't run with scissors and getting them fed and whatever your responsibility list is as a mother. We know these things that are required for our children's safety. And then there's like their physical safety, there's their emotional safety and well-being, there's their spiritual safety and well-being, and their mental safety and well-being. And they're all different buckets that just knowing what you're responsible for. Because again, we've been told and we've accepted that you are responsible for everything. And that's just it's not the case. I'm not responsible for how my children react. I'm not responsible for how my child feels, which is a big one. To know that you are not responsible for how your child feels.
Yeah.
And if you are like if you're abusing your child, again, there's gonna be people here like, well, if there's somebody out there, I always hear these crazy, like far off and well, if you're saying to me that if somebody's out there beating their child's not supposed to feel hurt by that. No, absolutely not. I'm talking about in the realm of healthy well-being. Right. I've never condoned abuse to children, emotional, physical, spiritual, mental, anything. That's not okay. That's a dysfunction that we're trying to get out of here. So when a mother is happy and healthy and whole and well, and she's making choices from that place, not from dysfunctional places, then and only then do these systems work. Right. And that's where you come in with all of these people when you're beautiful coaching and helping them to get to a place where they know who they are and they're confident and solid in these places. Right. So it does sound like a really big jump to people. They're like, I don't understand how to get there. And there are some simple ways that I have found that have gotten myself here because I wasn't this. I was an anxious, chaotic, dysfunctional mess like my mother is. And then like that, I've chosen differently. It was 17 and it was 29 and it was 33 and it was 39. Again and again and again. When I know better, like when you know better, someone was just like, you're doing the best you can, but some people don't know any better. And they'll hear something and they're like, oh, but that sounds good. Like how many women and that I've experienced that they say, oh, I wish I could be like that, Angel. I wish I felt like that with my kid. Well, you know there's something better.
Yeah, and that is actually something that I wanted to talk to you about because so the thing that you had said that triggered me was we're talking about, motherhood, and it's like, it's this divine role that we get to play, and it is a privilege and it's an honor, and we should treat it like that. And you were talking about, like, if you need a break from your kids, like, what's actually wrong with you, in so many words, is what you were saying. And I was like, but I do need a break from my kids, Angel, but I do, and I don't want to be wrong for that. So tell me, like, you truly never need a break from your kids. That's a true statement.
That is a true statement. Yes. And I'm so glad that you were triggered by that. And because when I said it, I was like, oh my God, I just said that. I freaked out a little inside that I had said that publicly. It was a few days after that. I'm like, oh my God, I just said that. So I don't know who's going to hear that, but I said that out freaking loud in like social media arena. And yes, there's again a very delicate and beautiful, like so beautiful line between wanting and needing. I want time away from my kids from time to time. I don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the need. And people may block out here because they're like, oh, she's being into semantics, blah, blah, blah. But there's a really, really powerful line, and it's a super soft one, really, to recognize in yourself if you need it and what's going on, and to get honest with all of that, to wanting it. Like the other night, I just like, I knew I had some stuff coming up, and I bathed with my kids all the time. So we had a bath, the kids were out, my husband was home, but he got a phone call and he was talking to some friend about something, and the kids were like, I was like, I just wanted 15 minutes. You said you could do this. And he was like, oh crap. Like, he just got wrapped in his own stuff and he kind of forgot. But then enough time had passed that the baby just wanted me. And he's like, I can't handle this. The baby just wants you. And I didn't get that time at all. I was like, so I I put the candle on. I did the thing anyways. I brought the baby in the tub with me, and I did the ugly cry with the baby. And he calmed down immediately. He was like, okay, like mama just needs me to be here. And he was the snuggliest little bath dweller ever. And because what I needed, and maybe I'll ask you this too, and but like what I needed was to cry. What I needed was a safe space to cry. We're told that we need to do that away from our kids. So that's a narrative that I just don't believe in. Why do you need the time? Why can't you get what you need with them and show them that it's okay?
Yeah.
But not have to run out, and I'm not saying solid, maybe it's to go take a yoga class, but why do we have to separate ourselves from that which we really want and we know is nourishing and is all the beautiful stuff? Why do we need that? You can want it. You can want a moment alone for sure. Be like, you know what? I want to go out and I want to talk with my girlfriend, and I want to swear. I want to drop all the F-bombs, and I want my kids to hear it. You just want to like go that way. Like, have at it, go for it, do it. But to need it is from a place of, it's from a place of lack. It's from a place of scarcity. It's from a place of fear. Is that what's here isn't enough. I need to go out there to find it. And just fundamentally, you don't find anything you need out there. I don't believe that to be true, whether it's out at a yoga class or whether it's outside of your children, outside of your home, outside of your family, because you're just trying to run away from something in yourself. So, and it's getting really, really freaking honest with yourself about what it is that I need. Again, in that moment, I just needed a safe place to cry. And it comes back to, again, not feeling confident, and also not feeling safe.
So you do want time away from your kids. Do you think it's healthy to want time away from your kids?
I don't really want time away from my kids. I don't. Yes, that's not true. That's not true. My husband and I spend some very saucy time together in the evenings, and I don't want my kids around for that. That's time I want away from my kids. But I guess I kind of said it was easy for me to not put that together because they're sleeping. It's not like me. I'm not saying I want time away from you. Like, you're asleep and that's my time to, get saucy. But like really, like in times when they're awake, there's not a time where I don't want to be with them. And I do, like, I bring them everywhere with me. Like, I was at the vet yesterday getting the dog her like 3 month, whatever she was getting into. And even the vet was like, "You're amazing." And I was like, "Oh, thank you." Tell me more. He's like, "You're super mom. Like, look at you." And I didn't even have both the dogs with me. Like, usually we're out, we got both the kids, both the dogs. And, I don't have a stroller. Like, I don't do the double kid stroller thing because they don't want to be in a stroller. They want to be on me. Like, I'm piggybacking her on the back and I'm carrying him in the front and I'm walking the two dogs. And sure, some people probably look at that. They're like, this woman is crazy. I would never want to do that. How does she have these superpowers? But that's just what I want. I want my babies on me. I want them to hold me. I want them to, and that's just what I want. I don't think every woman has to want that, her motherhood, but it does matter. It does matter what you want. It does matter what you want your motherhood to look like. The women that I talk to and the mothers I hear, they're like, oh, I want this, this, and this, but I can't because of my past. It's always my past. It's always the trauma in my past or the trauma. It's always a trauma in the past. It could be a marriage. It could be your childhood. It could be your job. It could be your PTSD from Lord knows what, but it's always the past. And I don't treat any trauma in anybody's past lightly. Knowing the trauma that I've had in mine. And I've got people say the big T trauma, it's like the little traumas are like the big ones. I was like sexually assaulted at a young age. Like that's messed up. So I feel you when people are coming to the table with like, but I can't because this is so big. Like you can. You absolutely can. And I think for women and mothers, it really comes down to safety. When that trauma memory first came up to me, it came in kind of like a little glimpse where I knew what happened, but I didn't like see it. It wasn't like a crystal clear memory of what had happened. And I remember it took me about 2-3 weeks to tell my husband about it. And I was sitting with him and he was like, "Do you want a hug?" And I was like, "Yeah." Because we were sitting like opposite ends of the bed, like as far like the diagonal sides of the bed, like as far away as we possibly could have been. And I was like, "Yeah, I'll receive this hug now." And like I was like doing the little spoon thing. And as he held me, I was just weeping. And in the safety of that moment, when I'd opened myself up to just receive the love that he had for me, he's like, "I don't know what to do or say here, but I can hold you." And I felt the love that he had for me. The memory became very clear.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and then I was just weeping more because I was like, holy shit, now I know. And it was awful. But it was in the safety of that space that we had created, that we chose to create, and I allowed to be. And again, it doesn't have to be a big trauma thing for us to have that safe space. It's just safe to be you. It's safe to want what you want, and I don't think that every mother in this lifetime, like living on this planet, is meant to have this experience that I am. Because there's going to be women who are like, but I don't want that. And fine, like don't want it. But there are so many women out here who want what I have and don't know what's possible and don't know how to get it and are sitting there at home being like, having the mom guilt.
Yeah.
Like
Or just
I wish I could be that way. I wish I could feel that way. I wish I could act that way. I wish I could, I don't know, be crafty and creative and do, I don't know, all the things that I am, that people say often to me that they wish they could have or be or do or say. And so that's, if you want that, then you can have it. If you don't want it, that's also cool. I don't know why you wouldn't. It's beautiful, but
I mean, I agree with that. And I do think it's available to all of us, but I do think that some people are more, it's you, it, parenting does not seem to stress you out in the way that it does others.
Yes.
So what do you see as like, I understand that there is choice in that, there's choice in how we show up, there's choice in how we respond. But if we are somebody, and I guess I'm kind of like answering my own question as I'm saying this, but it is like, if we are somebody that's anxious or heightened, like obviously we have our shit that we need to deal with on our own. And that's bleeding into our motherhood at that point, right? Like um, it's not your kids that are stressing you out. You're stressed out. Like you're heightened, you're anxious. Your kids are just there and it's almost like a scapegoat, right? Like my kids are stressing me out.
Nobody wants that for their kids. And again, it's accepted. It's motherhood stressful. Doesn't have to be. It is for the majority, 100%. I don't deny that. I also live in the world of possibility. I don't just accept this is the way it has to be for women, because I'm a living example and I didn't come from it. It wasn't shown to me. Nobody emulated this kind of life for me at all. Still not.
So what has, as far as like your choice goes, because you are an entrepreneur, so you do your work from home, and so you do have the ability to educate your children. What did you say? Tell me again.
I cultivate an environment for inspired learning.
That's right. So you have that opportunity to cultivate that environment. And I think a lot of women would argue like that's not an option for me. Like I work full time, I'm a provider for my family, et cetera, et cetera. And the kind of like the norm is to send your kids to school and to work the 40-hour-a-week job. And so what would you say to that mother that's like kind of disconnected from this conversation, that's like, well, that's you because you are able to sit there and be available for your children all day to feed off you and to come up with these creative projects and to make the plant medicine and all the things. And like, I'm over here busting my ass in a 40-hour-a-week job that I commute to and you know.
Yeah, it really comes down to just like sheer radical honesty. Somebody say, well, that's not an option for me. I say, well, it's not going to be an option for you if you say that it's not. I asked my husband the other day if I could say this because he was like, he's a financial provider for this family, and he works very hard, and he does miraculous things. But he's like, when I started my company, I was drunk, stupid, and stoned, and I figured it out. He's not drunk or stupid or stoned anymore. But he was 26 years old. He had not begun any healing work. He was just a walking trigger from his own childhood wounds. Like he was a mess. And what he's built, because he's been willing to not give up on it, because that's what we said. And there are many times in our previous years where he was like, you got to get a job. And I said, nope. And it was a thing. I shouldn't laugh, but I did. That was not what we agreed upon. So the child is here, and we agreed that you would be the financial provider while I was home raising the children. That means you got to figure it out. I'm here to support you, but I'm not willing to sacrifice what these children chose me for because you can't figure it out. It's not a lack of capacity. Anybody can do it. And I know it's just like, well, I don't have that option. Maybe it's a single mom. You know what I mean? Maybe it's a single mom and she's like, I can't afford to live here and feed my kids if I don't go to work. Well, then what if you lived somewhere else? What if you didn't have that house with that rent or that mortgage? And what if you didn't live in that city where groceries were that price? I mean, there's so many options. So again, I'll get to how to make like a simple step to that in a moment. But to have that vision where it is possible. If you're always saying it's not an option for me, it's not an option for me. People say to me all the time, you're so lucky, Angel, it must be nice. I say, do you have any idea what my husband and I have been through to get here? And it's because I was unwilling to give up on what I knew to be the truth, is that I am here to raise these children. I'm not going to sacrifice it for money. Are you kidding me? You're going to wave some dollar bills in my face and say that this bill can't get paid? I don't care. We'll go bankrupt and we will go, but I don't care. Like it was never that. I just knew that it was not something like, look at these faces. I couldn't. I never could. And I think but that's big and it's scary. It's so big. Like, I'm going to lose everything in my life right now. Like what's important to you? And again, it's getting clear because when it's in our minds, it's this big chaotic mess. I'm going to lose my house. I can't feed my kids, this and that. Like one thing I know to be true is that things don't present themselves the way we think that they should in this life. Things don't turn out the way that we thought they would. I never thought that this would be me, that I would own this house on this land in this expensive city. And this summer, we're probably going to tear the roof off and throw another story on the house. And we're going to take that land from that other guy in the back and get a bigger property. All of these things, right? I wasn't, and raising my kids, and we're barefoot in the backyard, and we got all of our nature, natural magic things going on, and all of the things, like all of the beautiful things. This was never my dream. But like at 19, my dream was to have a son at the age of 24 like my mom did, and have a daughter at the age of 26 like my mom did, and do the things that made my parents, because that's what we had seen. And then just following those inclinations of like, well, this doesn't feel right. I am going to wear the pink floral skirt with the teal geometric shirt that everybody's like, that doesn't match. I'm like, but it feel good. It's following all those little urges along the way. So it doesn't just happen overnight. It's not something that just shifts. And like I have been to the depths of hell and dug deeper. I was very willing at some points in my life to try to go deeper. And I've been to the darkest places where there was even a moment in my life where there was a little voice in my head that's like, you should just kill yourself. And I never attempted it, but I mean, there's like, to be honest about like, how far are you willing to go? So many people are so willing to go down that dark, to go down that deep. What if you're willing to go a different way? What if something else was possible? What if it was an option for you? Then what would that look like? Okay, well, maybe it's not quit your job and just hope that the universe is going to give you a way to magically pay for your rental and raise your kids. But what can you do today that helps you feel like it is a possibility? Maybe you just wake up and you're like, what if it was an option for me? That's it. What if you practice that every day? What if it was an option? And I can't even, I could think of a million and one scenarios of what could possibly come through like that, because my mind's just very imaginative that way. But then it's an option.
Mm-hmm.
And then it can be that simple to just get it started. Maybe, I don't know, maybe she like, it's a mom out there who loves her kids, and this all of a sudden is walking down the street one day, trips and falls in the face of a millionaire who's just like, I want to, here's my mansion, raise your kids, just let me be with your beautiful, I don't know, like anything, crazy things are possible. It happens in the movies, anything really is possible. And I'm not saying that is for everybody, but if you're not willing to just really stand in what you want, I walked out the door on my husband in 2019 and I was like, no, we're done. I'm not standing for this shit anymore. And I was looking for the rentals. I was like, all right, I'm going to be divorced again. I've got a kid now. That's fine. Still got the same dog with me. She's super cool. And the next day my husband got sober and he hasn't had a drink since. But I didn't know he was going to do that. In fact, well, you bumped your arm. I'm sorry, puppy. In fact, I was actually certain that he would never do that. It was just, he's in the construction industry and it's just something super casual. People have, it was just, I was certain that he was never going to do it. And I just looked at myself in the mirror one day and I couldn't look at myself in the mirror as my dog. I'm hiding in the bathroom. I was hiding in the bathroom. That's when the bathroom reference comes out. And my daughter was there. My dog was there. And I was like, I can't live with myself. I can't raise my daughter this way. So I just walked out the door and everything changed, and look at our life. My husband says he knows now. He's like, if you wouldn't have done that, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And it was a big and scary thing to do. Like I left our home. I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't make any money at that time at all. But it didn't matter because you have to know what's important. And then we change our priorities daily. Like, but this is important, that's important, this is important. Just know. And if you're a mother, it's got to be your kids.
Yeah. And I do think it is like those bold moves, right? And I feel like, so speaking of like the mom guilt, I feel like for me, a lot of the guilt that I do carry in motherhood, it comes from when my children were younger and for being so committed to my career. And in my mind, the reason that I was so committed to my career was to provide my children a better life than I had, and to show them that there's more possibility than what they see. And in all that, I got lost, I got lost in caring more about a paycheck than the quality time with my children, like caring more about like providing for them than providing them like just the love and the attention that they need. So that is a very real example of mom guilt, but it did require me to take bold action and to totally walk away from a career that, on paper looked great, to have more time with my children, and eventually to start my own business and to put it all on the line for more time with my children. And like, it's
He's cheering you
not
on.
always, What's that?
He's cheering you on. He's like,
Oh, right. Yeah. It's not always the easy path though, I think is the point. It's like, it's how big of a priority is it to you? And I guess a question for you, because of, obviously you are passionate about the way that you live it appears to come easy for you. And you talk a lot about like this sacred motherhood. Do you feel like the mothers that are like, in the very career oriented and dropping the kids off at daycare and all those things, do you think that they are doing their children a disservice in that? Like, do you think that they're forsaking their role as the sacred motherhood?
yes, I do. And it's also not up to me. From where I stand, from what I know motherhood to be, and I'm talking like big vision. I'm not talking like you specific person there in Baltimore. I don't know. Maybe somebody's listening in Baltimore. It's yes, this is not what motherhood's supposed to be. I think if and is that where this particular soul is on her journey? No. But do I really wholly believe that she's going to come back here and do it again and do things a little bit differently and have the opportunity to do it differently? Yes, I do. We're not all on the same path on our journeys in this world, and I know I have awareness of 2 past lifetimes where my husband and I have kind of sorry, those who can't see me, like been in existence together, and that's why we're so very intensely passionate with one another now, and that goes for like the good passionate and like the passionate, is because we've been longing to be together for a really long time, and this is our heaven on earth life here. We've worked and we've moved through so much in past lifetimes to be here to have this life for our children. And I know this is not just wisdom from this life for me. This is stuff that I have moved through and carried prior to this. And women might not be at this place yet. They're if that's like, nope, that's what I want. I want to do this and that. So is it doing their children a disservice? I think that that's unfair to say that it's doing their children a disservice. Because their children have their own soul journeys as well, right? And that's not for me to know. So I do believe that our children choose us for a specific reason, to learn the lessons that they need to. Is the ultimate soul goal to have this experience like I am with my children? I believe that to be true. Is that what's going to be for everybody in this lifetime? I don't think so. But do I believe that they're going to come back and try it again and get here? Yes, I really do. I think when I think, is it the ultimate goal? Yes, it's the ultimate soul goal, but it might not be the physical goal for this life. And in terms of you, if I may just go back to your mom guilt, on that ties into you as well. Like, if that may alleviate some guilt for you, your children chose you for a reason, and you being willing to like be honest and make those bold moves for you, that's the kind of impact on a soul level that your children fucking chose you for.
Yeah.
So to look at that time, be like, I did them a disservice, but that's all that needed to happen for you to get to that point where like they've now seen you, they've experienced you, and they felt you in this journey, which is what we want for our kids. We want them to experience life in their own way. They're going to fall and they're going to feel like, maybe I could have, maybe you think you could have done this sooner. That's where the guilt's coming from. You're like, but now that I know this, you're back framing it saying, I should have known that then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do agree that our children choose us and that they are here to teach us very valuable lessons. And yeah, I think as far as the guilt goes, that doesn't always alleviate it, and it's like, you said it earlier, it is like that letting go piece, right? It's like letting go of the past, letting go of, we can talk about what we should have, could have, would have done differently all day long. But
right,
at some point, the acceptance is like, is that regret, is that guilt holding you back from being the mother that you want to be now because you're holding on to that?
And there's a really beautiful piece that comes into play with like, how do you let go? It's not a physical thing. I can't just like, toss a toss a handkerchief in the wind and have it blow away. It's forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
To forgive yourself, to say, I didn't know then what I know now, and like actually forgive yourself. And how does one forgive? It's a process that I think will look different for a lot of people. And you know, you and I can maybe talk about that in another realm of like how to forgive. But it comes with a willingness to forgive. Like, I forgive you because you've forgiven other people. I know you have in your life for things. So how did you do that? And then apply that to how you can possibly forgive yourself. And that, I think, really is a pivotal piece in allowing you to be in the present moment and to alleviate that mom guilt. Like, sure, let it go, because we can brain it as much as we want. Like, our logical mind is a beautiful tool and we often misuse it. And saying, okay, well, I choose to let go of it. I understand it. And then there also, once you understand it, that's a beautiful level to reach. And then we have to continue integrating it so that we can embody it. Like, all of a sudden there will be this day you're like, oh my God, I get it. I love me. And then you're playing that like, I love me and I love myself. And all of a sudden you're jamming out and then you feel it. It's not just some words that you're trying to feel. You will one day feel it, but it's a practice, and it comes back to like, how do you get from maybe that single mom who says it's not an option for me to live this beautiful life that you do. It starts with just being willing to play with the idea that maybe it is possible. What if that was an option for me? What if it was an option for me to not feel guilty about this? What if it was an option for me to forgive myself? It's like, just what if? Because we do the what ifs all the time. Like, what if my kid gets hit by a bus when they're crossing the street to go to school? And what if I don't, but all the things that we know, what if, we have trained ourselves, and we've been trained this way, but we continue to regurgitate it to be so hyper aware of all the bad things that can happen. What would it be like if we just practiced being really hyper aware of all the good things that could happen?
Yeah.
And what's on the opposite of guilt? So if you're feeling guilty, then what do you want to be feeling? Okay, guilt, we don't want that. What do you want?
Yeah. Peace, ease, forgiveness. Yeah.
And here we are. Okay, well, now I want peace. And we do this so much. We know what we don't want. Well, I don't want to be stressed. I don't want to be overwhelmed. And there's a lot of beautiful coaches in the online space and the physical space that you can connect to that will help you recognize what it is you don't want, because some people don't even. They're so overwhelmed that I don't even know what's going on here. And then just recognize it and then let it go. It doesn't need to be analyzed. It doesn't need to be dug into. We don't need to go to hell and keep digging. Say, okay, like, because there's always going to be like, once you hit rock bottom, you bounce up. Well, some people hit rock bottom and start digging.
Yeah.
Then they find a lake and then they drown some more, and then they find another rock bottom and then they keep digging. There is, I don't think there's truth to that really, because you'll find if you want to keep digging, you're going to keep digging and it's going to get worse. It is that choice to just say, well, what if?
Yeah.
And be open to it being different, not being like, what if I bump into a millionaire and fall flat on his face and he gives me his mansion and I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Not being attached to that outcome that it's going to be this way. But what if there was a way for me to be, again, going back to the responsibility thing, and I'll pin that and just go to you for one moment, of the responsibility with your kids and your own forgiveness, not being responsible for how that affects them. It's like, I own it. It was mine. And I'm sure I know you well enough to know that I'm sure you've had some of these conversations with your children about what you're processing, right? Which is so beautiful. And this is why they chose you. So on their soul level down there, they're like, yippee, like she figured it out. They're so freaking stoked for you. I don't know, maybe your kids aren't saying that on the outside, or they've probably thrown you a little party at some point. You have darling daughters. But on their soul level, they're so excited, and you feel it because you have those moments with your kids. And any mother listening, you have those moments with your children where you're just like, yes, this is it. This is what I want. And it's so beautiful and it's easy. And it's just like everything slows down. You become that slow motion scene in the movie and everything's just so beautiful, And it's a willingness to just have what you want. Like, simple example right now. You can't see this, especially for those listening. My son is standing awkwardly on a chair and a stool. I'm bent over and he's twisting my one nipple and he's drinking milk from the other one. And there is sand everywhere because he also got into like my little Zen garden while we were recording this today. And did I had planned for this to happen right now? But I want to be available to breastfeed my children when that's what they want from me, right? It probably looks hilarious, and it's a simple example like that too. Also, like, what do you want to be satisfied in this moment? Do you want to be preparing delicious meals for your children, or do you want to order in from, I don't know, the organic little cafe down the street? I don't know. It's just, there's all like, we're given so many moments every single day to just stand for what we want. And
Yeah.
we don't live in a world where integrity and backbones are valued. We live in a world where sacrifice is valued. And you would have experienced this in your corporate world for sure. There is value in sacrifice for what you're going to have later. But you know what that breeds? You don't get what you want later.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law is a shining example. She's in her 60s now, and she's still working her bones off for that day where someday she can retire and one more year, one more year, one more
Mhm.
year. And then where's the life, And
Yeah.
there's so much you can unpack there as well. But we're like, what do you want today?
Well, and I think that is that is the beautiful way that you live your life. And I try to live my life like this as well, but it's that believing in like the pure potential of it all, right? It's like it's hard for us to grasp that because it's not real and it's not predictable and it's not playing out exactly how we think it's going to, but it is just that belief. And to your point, like focusing on what we do want over what we don't want. And that is relatable to our relationship with our children as well. Like, um, not focusing on, yeah, the way that they're acting that we don't like, or the part of our relationship that we don't feel good about. It's like, what are the things that you're excited about in your motherhood? What are the things that lift you up in your motherhood, and focusing more on that?
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, it's like the whole motherhood thing is like their childhood and our motherhood. Like it's the same. It's the same experience. I want to like mesh up a new word for it, because there is that. And there are some beautiful people who are like, but don't forget, like their childhood is your motherhood. Like you get to enjoy it too, because there are some moms out there as well who are doing the martyr thing where they're like, I'm sacrificing myself for them. And they have a beautiful childhood, but I'm miserable. They're not having a beautiful childhood if you're miserable, period. So we need a new word, like, what is this? I don't know. We'll make it up.
It's like the co-creation, right, of whatever that
Yeah,
is.
and their experience, and I think a lot of the times my daughter and I, and my son particularly, we experience the same things because we're very intimately connected in the way we live our lives. But it's just gonna shift. Like I don't really know. No one ever really knows how anybody internalizes or perceives anything. It's just
Mhm.
you can tell at the end of the day, and you can tell in all the moments throughout your day. Like there's not a moment, there's not a day that goes by when there's not dozens of moments where my daughter is just like radiating blissful joy from her face in something that we have done or said or tasted or anything, and for me, like that's the sanctity of motherhood. It's like we live this life now. It's motherhood is not a task that you need to get through, like, oh, they've made it to 18, off you go. Like I want my mommy to mother me now. She's not capable. She's not. And it doesn't mean that there's not parts of me that don't want it. And some days where my husband holds me and I cry because I feel like my mommy doesn't love me, and that's mine. And my children aren't going to have that.
Yeah.
And I know that because of the choices that we're making. And you say it's not the easy path, in how we choose everything from how we choose to live. It's like the traditionals, like the new progressive, like, oh, you're a stay-at-home like wife, like, whoa, how do you do it? And it's been some really tough choices and some really hard conversations that both my husband and I had to be willing to have, and we had to be willing to hold, because it's tough.
Yeah.
Tough not to be pushed around. And my husband never meant to push me around, being like, we got to pay our bills. You need a job. I said, no, we got to I moved from you got to figure it out to we got to figure it out. That was a trajectory in our own marriage as well. Like we can figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause
What is that? Just, I am curious, what is your view on that? Like as far as roles go with like mother versus father, do you kind of lean towards like the traditional, like father's the provider, And that-
Definitely. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I fought it. I was, I had like my girl boss hashtag total phase where it's like wasn't going to be that way at all. And I know too much now about like the biology of motherhood and the physiology of motherhood and the psychology of motherhood to negate the fact that this is how nature intended. Like the wild mama, I know it's like the name of my podcast, but I basically decided just to, like, this is my brand, this is my essence in life, is this wild mama, and it's to unleash your inner wild, like your beautiful essence, your beautiful magic, and it's for total motherhood restoration, like to restore motherhood to its natural state. And what's natural? To leave your child who wants to breastfeed with you at the age of 1 so you can go back to work at a job that you don't like because you need the money to do the thing. There's nothing natural about that. You know, me trouncing around naked in my backyard planting seeds with a baby hanging off my boob is natural.
Mhm.
It's just there's everything natural about that. And even from childbirth, you know, I did have I think I was very blessed to have the hospital experience to birth my daughter that I did, but I free birthed my son at home. And it was the most extraordinary. Birth is always extraordinary. I was, if I had enough room for all the babies, I'd give birth like every day. So that's how it works. It's like, I just love giving birth to babies. We're probably gonna have like a whole clan here in no time, but it's it's so magical, and it does it. I have to be really mindful with my own emotional and spiritual boundaries to not get caught up in how much people really are missing out, you know. And you can have this experience in this lifetime for you. It doesn't need to take, you all right, Bubbers? It doesn't need to take 10 lifetimes for you to figure it out. It doesn't have to, it can, if that's the way that you want it to be. But we are so powerful, and we're we're held down, we're pushed down, we're told that we can't, we're told that's not the way it is, and then we accept it, and then we blame other people, and we live in this, you know, another victim mindset thing. It's just so big and trendy these days, like get out of your victimhood, but also just like get into your authority. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, like when you put your feet on the floor in the morning, how do you feel about yourself? Do you feel strong? Do you feel empowered? Do you feel centered? Do you feel at ease? You say it's not easy. And I know I have my moments too, where it's just like, I want my unicorns. Like, where are my unicorn mamas who want to flounce around in my backyard with me and practice natural magic and learn about herbs? Like, my daughter's the one going down the street picking plants and feeding them to her friends, telling them what they are and how good they are for her. Like, she's not even 6, like just things that she knows that I didn't know growing up, you know. And again, maybe not your path in this life, but if you want it, if you feel that in your heart, you're like, oh, that would be so nice, then that's here for you now, and you can have it now. And and I just don't think there's a lot, like I'm so excited that you invited me on here to do this, because people aren't talking about this in the
Mhm.
way that you have opened up the conversation to speak about. And I've only recently started speaking really openly about like really what I value in the wisdom that I have. And it's not for everybody, you know, like there's too many people on this planet for everybody to be like, yes, Angel, I totally get it. You know, and it's not, because then I also don't think I'd have the experience of being me if everybody was just like, yay, Angel, you know. People bump
Yeah.
up against me all the time. And it's hard because, you know, we we don't fit in. You know, and
Well,
there's
and you're describing like a one end of the spectrum, right? Like it is very different than, and that would sound extreme to some people, like to be naked in your backyard with a kid on your tit, like picking the berries. Like that feels extreme to some people. But I think that like what I've always seen in your motherhood that I'm like, I want that. It's like the patience, the presence, and like you do embody that. And you actually had a post that I wanted to touch on, because you said like, you know, you want to know the secret to unlimited patience
yes.
and it's to pause. And like that seems so simple. So can you give me your spiel on that?
So elegant, isn't it? It's so
Mhm.
elegant. It's like the old Staples commercial, wasn't it? Like the easy button. Um, yeah, it's the pause. And sometimes it's a really long pause. I think that's the thing. People are like, okay, pause. and then they just freak out again the way they normally would. That's not a pause. I think the magic in the pause is pausing long enough to experience something different. And that's, I mean, for the patience, because patience is a really big one. Patience is a really big one with a lot of moms, and the ease comes from the patience. So if you can tackle the patience, not be like, I have all these things to tackle. If you can tackle the patience, then the ease really comes into play, and it's self-control, it's emotional regulation, it's mental control. Like it's like full authority over who you are and who you're being, and it takes practice. It's not like, oh, I have this practice. Angel said pause. I'm going to pause. You're not going to nail it the first time. Like I didn't.
Well, for a
But
lot of us, it's like rewiring our entire nervous
it
system.
is.
to
And
see them.
inside that pause, so like the process is simple, just pause. What happens inside that pause is chaotic and erratic and messy and like opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to just really see what's going on. Because when we zoom past it and we just go back into reactivity and following on habits and saying the things you always say, and then after the fact we look back, we're like, oh no, I don't really believe that. I don't align with that. That's not the mother I want to be. All the mom guilt comes in. So it's the willingness to pause. So when you're in that moment, you're just like, it's like you're ready to just swing back and like unleash on whatever it is to pause. Like, and sometimes you like physically restrain yourself, if it's just like, I'm going to sit down, and because you can feel that reaction in you to just like defend, explain, fight, whatever it is, and to learn to control that. And there's so many techniques you can use inside that space of like physically restraining yourself. If you're a thrower, people like throw Tupperware. I threw Tupperware once. I can say that honestly. Whatever your actions are, what they are, right? So what do you need, and know ahead of time. So there is a pre-planning component in that as well. Okay, I'm gonna lose my crap. I know it's gonna happen, but I have these tools that I've set myself up with. So when I feel that way, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to close my eyes, and I'm going to think about that time that I went to Tahiti and the beach was really beautiful and I felt ease there. Maybe that's it. I've never been to Tahiti, but so to have tools ahead of time, because if we're not preparing for it, what's going to happen. But then in the moment, we all of a sudden expect ourselves to be able to think of the way to do it. And in those moments of really intense reactivity, we don't have the capacity to do that. So if it's just knowing in your mind or having it written down, like a laminated list, I don't know if people like that kind of stuff, of like, just follow the steps. Okay, instead of doing the thing, I'm going to pick up the list. Okay, sit down, take a deep breath. Like it's that part is a little individual, I think. And that would be something that, you or I would work through with somebody specifically to find the things that feel aligned for them to move through, and then just be like unwilling to falter on that. And it might be like, okay, I said sit down, step one, and then all of a sudden you're up again. Nope, go back to step one, sit down. But I said the thing, and having it be that messy, and having your child. I've had a couple of times where Ophelia, when she was younger, look at me like,
What are you doing?
what is happening here right now? And be committed to doing it, and again, communication is so key in this, to the people that we're with, to our children and to our spouses, to immediate family or friends, whoever you're spending the time with, that what's going to happen with, like letting them know what you're up to. Like I'm really working on this area of myself. I don't want to be reactive this way. I want patience in my life. And this is a process that I've defined. You don't have to go into all the details. I have a process. So when this happens, like, just so they're not, a kid will be chill. They'll watch you and stare at you for probably half an hour and like try to figure you out, right? An adult will say, what are you doing? They'll confront you a little more about it. So having that communication so people know what you're doing, patience is so huge, and it's practice. And knowing that, like, and then be willing to celebrate. Be like, you know what? I only made it to step 2, but I made it to step 2. And then the kid will calm down, because when you start doing something like weird, like, let's be honest, they're gonna,
Yeah.
if they're the one that's triggering you and they're freaking out, they're gonna also show good. And having that faith in our kids, it comes back to that as well. I remember really early on when I started practicing this, and it was a Tupperware scenario where I do not remember what Ophelia was doing that was driving me batty, but I could feel it bubbling up in me, and I picked up the Tupperware and I threw it down the hallway, and I was like, enough, and I screamed it, and she just looked at me, obviously started bawling, because it's super scary when mommy does that. And she was maybe, I don't know, maybe 2, maybe 2.5, and And then I remembered what it was that I had said to committed to myself to do, which was to pause. I didn't do it, but I'm going to do it now. And I stood there and I stopped talking. For me, that's what it was, is just stop talking. Like cover your mouth and just stop talking. And in that pause, within less than 60 seconds, she regulated herself. She came down from wherever she was and she regulated herself. And then we hugged. And it was all okay.
What?
It wasn't an escalation. It didn't grow up in this big thing. And because it's like, okay, I wasn't perfect. I recognized a little too late. I took the pause a little late that time, but I took it. And then he did. And then I committed to it. And then honestly, like if I could put you in my brain right now, and if you could see, it's just such a powerful memory in my brain that I'd actually kind of forgotten about, just to watch her. When I chose to just stand there and say nothing and be still, what she was capable of. And like that responsibility, like it's not my it's not my responsibility, forgive me, to make you feel a certain way. But it is my responsibility to stand for who I know I am, who I know you are, and what we're capable of. And in that space, like magic happens. It's just sheer and utter magic. And it was so fast. It was so much faster than anything I've ever moved through in my life. She was very heightened. I guess to give a little more context, she was very heightened and very worked up about something. And it was just, and my tendency has been to just explain. I'm going to talk at you about it, because if I talk and I explain it enough, you're going to understand, then you'll stop. That's not what she needed. All she needed was for me to shut up, stop talking, and just be with her.
Yeah.
And as mothers, we were told, like we were told to carry so much weight, and that all this responsibility is on us, and on a lot of us, because women, we tend to really gravitate towards talking it out.
Yeah.
And again, that there is really good benefit in talking it out. It's coming from a good place. But if you're just like, I'm going to talk at this so it goes away, like it's not coming from the right place. And there's a power in the pause. And because I gave myself that experience, and I think I know it to be true, that if mothers are willing to put this into practice, they'll see how simple it really is, because it sounds like it's impossible. It couldn't be that easy. But if you're not willing to try and do it, like that was my moment. And I will probably, I've told the story before, and it keeps popping back up into my consciousness, because that was the moment where I practiced it and I knew it was powerful because I saw it. And then, and then it's quick. The trauma's not done to your kids, right? Like, I mean, sure, like throwing Tupperware down the kitchen once, probably not traumatizing your kid. If you're doing that every day and they know that's what to expect, like you're traumatizing, and you rectify it. Don't wait 2 weeks and mom get yourself for 2 weeks. Be like, baby girl, I'm so sorry. Like I'm so reactive. You don't have to explain yourself. Just like, I'm so sorry. Here we are. And that's the magic. So I look forward to the women who to practice it and come forward with stories. You're like, you know what? I did this, and I messed it up the first 6 times, but I had this moment and I felt it and I saw it, and your kid, and then all of a sudden, like, then that sanctity, that magic of the mother-child bond that I'm here to heal and restore, it starts to flow, and you feel it, and then you get the skin tingles like I do all the time, and having these conversations, you're like, yeah, this is it. So is this our purpose as mothers here in this physical world? Yes. Are there many mothers out there who are going to continue to deny it to themselves? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's their choice to make, because you get to choose.
Well, I think when we're disconnected in our motherhood, and you've kind of alluded to this, it's like we're disconnected from ourselves first and foremost. And that's what our kids are getting, is all of that. And yes, I have had to practice the pause. That's been a huge one for me. And it's just the talking, like just stop talking, like just stop talking, take a deep breath, and like, let this situation play out. Let them talk, let them have their moment, and it's like that. I think a lot of times it's that need for control. As a mother, we think we play this role where we're controlling it all. And when we're doing that, we're taking the choice away from the child. And we're not in control. At the end of the day, we're lying to ourselves. We're not in control, and we'll drive ourselves crazy trying to be.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Be the good kind of crazy, the kind of crazy that just happened. Just like, oh my God, that was crazy.
Yeah.
Really, to this day, that was insane. And it's awesome. Not like crazy. Feeling like that kind of crazy. I don't want to be that kind of crazy.
Yeah. So one last question for you, Angel. Um, you you do stay very true to yourself, and you're strong in your beliefs, and that's what you stand for, and that's always been something I admired about you. Do you feel judged in your motherhood often or ever? And if you do, does that bother you?
Judged. I'm probably gonna have to go back a little bit of space here. And also he's gonna that mute button. I do not feel judged anymore. I definitely did, for sure. When I first became, when my daughter was first born, I caught myself on something. I'll explain that. So when I first became a mother, because we're all mothers, I talked about that, but I'm changing my own narrative on when you become a mom, when the baby's here, we're all mothers. When my daughter was born, it was definitely, my mom, for example, was just, the boob's not the answer for everything. I was like, why not? That's what they want. It's the answer. It's the answer when that's what they want, right? And for babies, that's what they want. And so in moments like that of being told as early in mothering my daughter in that journey, it definitely felt, especially from my mother, again, another illumination. Oh man, if that's how you feel, that's probably how you were with me, right? And that opens up a whole other door. So judgment from the people. I was closest to me as well. I also I put very close and very firm boundaries on my family at that time as well. And because I had come in, all of a sudden it was, the Technicolor world and the Wizard of Oz had illuminated itself to me, and I knew the truth, and I wasn't letting energy vampires into my world. I wasn't letting that toxicity in. So I didn't leave a lot of room to feel very judged. Probably as a safety mechanism, because I knew that I would be. And also when my daughter was quite young, the couple years, as I referred to, where the world went insane, our boundaries got firmer and clearer as well. And less people were in our world. So I think a lot of what I moved through, and again, divine perfection, a lot of what I moved through and really coming into standing firmly with confidence, not just like I stand here, but I might fall over, really standing firmly, happened in a really safe space, because I knew the safe space was needed. For what me and my husband were moving through in our marriage at that time, for what I was moving through spiritually, for who I wanted to be for my children. That was just a really conscious choice to make our world very small. And we talked about that a lot, my husband and I, just to really ensure that the environment that we were cultivating was what we wanted. We both gave up drinking, and we just, it was a lot of harsh cuts for people in our life. So like, what is going on over there? We just needed to do, we wanted to do what we knew we needed to do to break the cycles that had been really going on for a long time. So we made our world really small. So judgment, I felt it for sure. Had I had my boundaries wider and more open, I would have felt it, I believe, a lot more. And now that now that I know, I know who I am, but I'm not sure how to be that. Now that I know who I am and I know how to be it, and I embody it the way that I do, our circles have gotten bigger, and we've allowed more people in ways that still serve us. But we still got some pretty firm boundaries on what's okay and what we'll allow our children to experience, and not in a way that's sheltering them or protecting them from experiencing the world for its truth. However, the world that we're offering and the environment we cultivate for our children is the world as we know it to be, not as it is. So most people are like, well, that's not the way the world is, Angel. I say, come on over to the Rockwell house, because that's how it is here. And it's true. People come into our home, they're like, what are you guys doing in here? It feels different. It looks different. And it wasn't always this way, but it's really just dig your feet in and stand for what you know to be true, is how it's been. And I think the judgment can I guess you know, like little things with every time we go out and my son will not wear shoes. He won't do it. There's still snow on the ground again, and we won't do it. He'll go out barefoot. My daughter's the same way, where she's like, "Mommy, I'm grounding in nature." Do like a little goddess pose in the earth, and we don't play in the snow for long periods without boots, but he will not put shoes on. So anywhere we go in public, he's barefoot, shoeless, got his little amber like anklets on, just looking like the little nature man that he is. So sweet, and everybody's like, "Oh, where's your little shoes? Why you don't wear shoes on?" And an older version of me would have probably felt like, "Oh my God, like you think I'm doing something wrong?" And I'm like, "He doesn't need shoes." They're like, "What?" And then interesting conversations come up, right? Because the one lady's like, "Oh, well, I just heard from my doctor, plantar fasciitis and you gotta wear shoes." And I was like, "That's true." And I could feel her getting like, and all of a sudden she kind of stopped talking to me and was like, "How are you?" To my daughter. She's like, "I don't like talking to you. Like you're not accepting my limitations right now. You're not accepting that I have to wear these silly shoes because I'll get plantar fasciitis." I'm like, "Well, go in nature, walk around in the earth. The earth will heal you." I'm just like, "Let me get my herbs and heal you with my sprinkles." She was not having it, and it was fine. But it's all a matter of practice. 10 years ago, I mean, I wasn't this woman 10 years ago, but even when my daughter was first born, I wouldn't have said that. I would have been like, "Oh, I don't know. It fell off in the car. I'm not sure. And it's like, he doesn't need shoes.
Yeah.
17 months. He does
Yeah.
not need them. He doesn't like, have you ever tried to keep socks on a baby for the most part? There's all these things you can buy now, like have Velcro and extra straps to keep the shoes on the babies. Does this not seem crazy to anybody? Again, if you have to force it that hard, it's not in alignment. They're meant to be naked, running around barefoot, drinking milk and, from a boob. I'll say that too. I mean, the milk was there from the boobs for a reason, and all things, but it's not possible for me. Whether it's breastfeeding or motherhood or patience or ease, well, it is an option for you and it is possible for you, and it's a process. It is a process. So like the simple step of taking pause, it sounds so simple. It is that simple. It's elegant and it's beautiful, but you've taken those moments, and what happens inside that pause is far from elegant or beautiful or graceful or easy or comfortable. It's messy, and I've done that, like the hands on the mouth. And I still do it. I've mastered it to the degree that I know how to practice it, but that doesn't mean I don't have to practice it. And now I get to practice it with my husband too, which is super fun. I learned so many beautiful things with my children, and then okay, well, I got this. I can be this way with my husband, because I want that ease with him as well. And I can be like this with, my mother-in-law. I want ease there too. And all the things. It's motherhood is just, that's the magic of motherhood really is that it's we have the safest space in the whole wide universe to practice to be who we want to be. There's no safer space than with your children, and that's why, my husband's like, "Oh, I'm sorry you didn't get your moment in the bath." I'm like, you know what? It was perfect, because there is no safer space than my children. Even today, the supportive, he's like, "I want to make sure that you're here and present for like the space where I'm most lit up and on fire is in space with my children." It's, uh, there's so many stories. Like I went for a walk with a friend once, and the dog pooped, which dogs do in their walk, but like I think like Ophelia was crying, and I don't know, she was like sitting down crying about something, and the dog was leashed around the tree and stuck in a bush while trying to like pick up the poop, and I'm talking to her and she's just laughing. She's like, "You are a hot mess in the most beautiful way." And I was like, "Thank you. I really appreciate that," because it's not, we don't need to get worked up about it. Like you're safe. You can cry for a moment, because you deserve letting your feelings out as well. The dog might be getting pricked soon by that bush she's stuck in, so I'm gonna probably get that out first. Also, don't want to forget the poop, because all the things, all the things, all the time, all the things, all the time. And how do we choose to handle it? And she's like, "You did not miss a beat. You did not stop talking. You did not break eye contact with me. Like you were in the conversation." And again, it's just part of my magic. I don't think I'm better than anybody else, or that that's not it. This is just me. And I've had so many opportunities in my life to really recognize that it's time to stop apologizing for being me. And it's time to stop apologizing for being strong and being committed and being integral to myself, and feeling how I do, and knowing what I do, and knowing that it's not for everybody, and that's all okay. But just being it. You know, there was points in my life where I didn't even like my body. And now I'm just like 2 babies in, you know, just like loving every inch of it. And just, my husband's like, when I put clothes on, he's like, damn, he's like, you're naked all the time. Literally, in the house, we're always naked. It's like putting clothes on is the turn on for me because I'm just so used to just seeing your ass everywhere, which is fine. It's definitely, it's been a process because I feel, and I think you met me in, or we met in 2001 and my daughter was born in 2018. So like a lot happened in those first 3 years as well, of even my pregnancy with my son to my pregnancy with my daughter. Like the clothes that I wore when I was pregnant with her were like maternity clothes. And I look back, I'm like, me, and I didn't feel good in it either, you know? My pregnancy with my son, I basically wore like beach cover-ups, like little, those things when you go to when you go to vacation to Mexico, like I'm gonna buy this little beach wrap and it's kind of sassy and it undoes and it has a little sheer, but that's all I wore. If I went out in public, I'd put a bathing suit on, but that was it. I wasn't like, there was nothing maternity at all. I just like, I wanted to feel sexy because like there's nothing sexier than like a woman just like in the mode of creation, whether it's humans or programmed or whatever she's doing. Your retreat, so beautiful. Like this, like there's all this creation, like a woman in that space. I'm like, I'm not putting on these jeans that have this big ugly brown top on them. Like I'm wearing my pants down under my belly and I'm showing the belly off and I'm gonna wave it in everybody's face and everybody wants to touch it. Not all everybody can, depends on how your energy is, you know, you got all that jazz, but it's so just very different, you know, and those people, some people have known me and have seen me through the whole thing. And I think that's kind of the magic about it is like, I knew you in 2014 and I see you now and whew, what can happen in 10 years when, and it's a willingness to stand in what you know, but it's also a willingness to listen because what you want changes and it ebbs and it flows and, you know, it's really how my thing as of late is like how satisfied are you with your current experience, whatever that is. And if you're not satisfied, then what are you willing to do to be satisfied? And for some people, it's, well, I got to figure out what will make me satisfied. And some people might be a little further down the line saying, well, I just need to take some steps. I know what I want. I'm not taking a stand for it. You know, in a million places in between. So many beautiful places to be, and they're all beautiful, you know, just, I know that you've had these moments and some women out there may not have had the opportunity yet to experience that moment when they feel, oh, this is what they're talking about. People told me one day I would be there and I would feel it, and now I feel it. And it's just not giving up. Whether it's being at home full time with your kids or not giving up on your marriage or not, I mean, people give up.
Yeah, you have to work.
And they settle it because we're told, we're taught from every angle that sacrifice is necessary to have what you want. And sacrifice isn't necessary to have what you want. Having what you want is necessary for having what you want. And stepping outside the physical things. It's not the, well, I want the house or the boat or the things. It's knowing what you want. You say it's peace, it's patience, it's ease, it's satisfaction, it's happiness, it's slowing down. Oh man, I once the 10 years ago me was working an 80-hour-a-week job, running all full tilt, basically living off of coffee. My hair was fluorescent pink, literally a firecracker running around. And you know, this morning we woke up and we had story time in our room. I got out my ukulele and we read a story, and we like the story time in the library. You know, my kids like that, so we replicated at home of doing the songs, the activities, and reading the stories. And I even gave a little unicorn sticker at the end. And so that was the first hour of our day. You know,
Yeah.
so I think of all the running around that other people do of like, you know, you're already at your job and you're on your fourth cup of coffee and your kids are in the malicious arms of somebody else.
Yeah. I mean yeah, we're in go mode a lot. And especially in motherhood, we find ourselves in that go mode all the time. So thank you, Angel, for sharing your perspective and just for being willing to show up and be you and unapologetically you. I love that about you. I will say, if you want to see Angel in all her pregnancy glory that she's describing here, you have some of the best maternity photos I've ever seen. You're just like freaking goddess in the water.
They're on the wall back here, and so that's our little family wall for those who can see. Yeah. And also we're probably going to have more. So
I love it. I can't wait.
new ones. I say probably. We're just like, yeah, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. I love it. I love it too much. I love making the babies. I like growing the babies. I like birthing the babies. I like raising the babies. It's just the most magical thing in the world.
Yeah. So tell people where they can find you for inspiration and to follow your journey and anything exciting that you have going on that you want to share.
Ooh, where to find me? Well, if anybody happens to be listening, I live in West Coast Canada in the Okanagan Valley. So if you're here in the area, you can physically find me. I love in-person meet and greets. But you can find me on Instagram at what am I now these days? Morphine.
Why?
Wild Mama Spirit Medicine is what I am right now. There's some underscores in there. And I'm on YouTube at Angel Rockwell, I believe is the way to find me. I have the video versions of podcasts there. Well, all kinds of other fun stuff. I've never taken anything off of YouTube. So I have like fitness classes, like mama and baby stuff on there if you want to get moving as well. Old stuff, but good stuff. And currently what we've got going on is my moon circles, something that I started doing with my children, being in space to just ritualistically align with nature and connect with their children. A lot of healing, a lot of energy clearing, a lot of beautiful movement, and goes on in those spaces. Those are physically in person as well as online. I had too many people who were saying they wanted the on, like, you're far away, but this sounds great. So there are online options for those. They happen every 6 weeks, alternating full moon and new moon. And I have the conversation, which happens bi-weekly on Wednesdays. And it's just a space for mamas to join in online and talk about the things that matter, that are on our hearts, and get some support and guidance in terms of motherhood. And also Sarah didn't announce at the beginning. She's like, are you still a coach right now? I am a certified coach. So I have lots of capacity in terms of certification as well as just life experience to really guide people. So I bring all of that to the table. It's not just a bunch of mamas, biddying around, gossiping in that space. It's the conversation like this, just talk about what's on our hearts and on our souls, and to really show up and how to be the best moms that we can be. And babies are always welcome. Kids in the moon circles and in that conversation space too. It's not, I got to do this thing. I got to find care for my kids. I'm never that way. My kids are with me all the time. And I hope and I pray that that's the way it is my whole life. There's a beautiful existence here for us all inside of this space. And if we're willing to be honest about what we want in our lives and have that for ourselves and consider it a possibility, then man, this world is a really big and beautiful place.
Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. I love you so much. Thank you for sharing everything.
Thank you for being willing to have this conversation. I know because as well, you came forward and said a few of these things were triggering for you, and you're like, I'm going to step into this space, and I'm sure it probably happened again a few times, and it's the magic, to just recognize, who we are and what we want in our lives and the kind of people we want to have in our lives, and to not be afraid of those who make us a little bit uncomfortable. It was a big, bold move on your part to invite me here, and the same for all the things that we said today. You shared a lot of personal things too. So I just commend you. I freaking love you so much. And did this ever turn into one delicious, juicy, meaty conversation? I love it.
I know. I love it. I love it so much. And yes, thank you for being willing. And yeah, I knew it was going to be a good talk. So I am going to stop the